Okay, everybody, welcome to another RJO PEP event, also sponsored by RJO's Women Initiative Network. And our speaker today is Taylor Arnett. Taylor graduated from Central Michigan University in 2014, and fresh out of college, she came over to RJO. And she started working in RJO Futures in their marketing department. Currently, she works with Mark Sachs, handling sales and marketing, which goes anywhere from our web design, logo placement, branding, social media. She takes care of that for RJO. And today she's going to talk about three things: branding, social media, and customer reviews. So let's give her a warm welcome. I'm excited. Thank you, Taylor.
So like Lulu said, Alex and I handle everything marketing at RJO. So I'm going to go over three pretty random parts of marketing, but it's kind of hard to cover everything. So we'll get right into it. So like I said, there are all of these different types of marketing, and it kind of depends on what medium you're working with. But it's kind of hard to, when you're starting out either on your own to promote yourself or a company, to kind of know where to start. So seeing all these different options, you kind of think, where do I even begin? The first thing you need to do is establish your business objectives, and those are your end goals and where you want to end up with either, yes?
I apologize for interrupting so we don't all scribble notes. Will this PowerPoint be available to us later?
Yeah, I can send it to you guys. I thought you already had questions.
Good, I won't take notes.
So you have to establish your end goals first, and you also have to conceptualize what kind of audience you want to attract. And as you get going, this might change a lot, and that's okay, but you always want to at least start with something. So once you establish those two things, then you go back to the beginning and think about the path that you're going to create to get yourself to that end goal. So how are you going to attract that audience and still meet your business objectives? And what are the type of things you have to create to get yourself there? And then when you do that, you'll start to create a path for yourself to ultimately achieve those end goals. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is branding. And I chose this part of marketing because I think when you're first starting out, it's important to establish how things look and your brand as a company. So what is branding? It is the distinctive design used in the promotion of a particular product or company. So that includes items such as your logo, your company colors. It can even be as specific as the fonts that you use on things like your website and your brochures. Presentation templates like this. And it goes beyond just that. It goes to who you are as a company, and that can include your mission statement and company values. And those all kind of define who you are. 65% of consumers say that shared values create a trusted relationship with a brand. So it's important to establish your logo and your colors and get those going, but you also need to establish who you are as a company. And the more you do that, the more you align yourself with those values, the more people really relate to you. So I think of a company like Salesforce, which I follow a lot. They are very public about identifying themselves with very hot button issues right now. So things like environment, equal pay, LGBTQ rights, and you think if you identify yourself with those things, it might be controversial and you might turn people away. But when you establish yourself and you really hold to those values, you end up attracting the right audience, that one that you initially wanted in the first place, and people can kind of relate to you on a personal level beyond just being this big corporation. So why is this important? Consistent brand presentation across all platforms increases revenue by up to 23%. So that's probably anyone's end goal when starting a business, is making revenue so you can keep things going. When things are consistent, like your colors and everything like that, people might not necessarily notice good branding, but they will for sure notice bad branding. So you want to make sure that it's good and consistent across the board. Establishing color improves brand recognition by up to 80%. So that's a huge stat. So I think of, if I pair bright red and bright yellow, 9 times out of 10 you're going to think McDonald's without even seeing a logo or their name on anything. So something like color can really stand out. This is our quintessential RJO green. And again, there's not even a logo on this, but you think that green, you think RJO. And then 38% of users will stop interacting with a website if the layout is unattractive. So it goes beyond just being consistent with the branding. It has to look good too. Because again, they might not necessarily think, wow, that's really great branding, but if your website is bad, they will notice that, and it'll probably deter them from doing business with you. Studies show that people have the ability to recall 65% of the visual content that they'll see almost 3 days later. So this is important because in this day and age, it's really hard for what you put out there in marketing to stick in people's mind. We're bombarded with advertising and marketing all day, every day. But we do have the ability to recall that 3 days later. So if you establish this well, you could then become that household name. You think, oh, I want to start trading futures. Someone remembers that they saw our logo up to 3 days later, and they might then think of your brand. So how do we do branding at RJO? This is an example of our color palette, and it's very specific. If I'm in any of the design programs, I'm actually typing in these numbers so that these are exact. And you never want to eyeball this. You always want to make sure that it's super precise every time you're creating something, because as you establish those colors and as they become more consistent, it starts to become synonymous with who you are as a company. We also have rules on how we use our logo. So things like changing the colors, putting it on a background that makes it hard to read, skewing the way that it looks a little bit. You always want to make sure that your logo is pure. That's the most important part about your branding. It's basically your name and who you are. So you never want to make sure that it looks different than how you originally established it. And then, like I said earlier, it also comes down to fonts. We have very strict rules with the fonts that we use when it comes to our website, because as you're navigating from page to page, if you're using different fonts every time, you do notice that. So you want to make sure that it's consistent. Something like an advertisement or a brochure, the rules are a little bit looser, but you, again, want to make sure that it's consistent from page to page.
I understand with both the typography and the colors, the consistency angle, obviously, that makes sense. Does there remain, I don't know how to say it other than functionality issues? What I'm thinking of specifically is 15 years ago, we had a tear sheet that we had a page of a website at a CTA I ran. Mm-hmm. Printing that onto a printer, the color translation didn't work. In other words, the blue here wasn't the same blue there. Is that also a consideration now, or is that kind of settled itself over the last?
You're never going to prevent someone from going on a web page and printing it out, and depending on their printer, it will just look different.
Yeah.
But if I'm gonna print out actual official brochures, I'm gonna go to one printer to do all of them, because then it will be consistent across the board.
And but again, from the electronic version to a print version, that translation has become easier, I guess is my question.
It's better, but it's still different.
Okay.
Because things will just always look differently on, especially the type of paper you use. Sometimes the ink absorbs differently, and so it'll just look different than on a screen. But you can accommodate for that. I know that some of our colors look darker when you print them than versus on the screen.
Right.
So you make it a little lighter, which you think would go against the branding, but because I know it's going to be printed, you try to accommodate for that.
Anticipate the
You
effect.
overcompensate, yeah.
Well, and I know too, my printer at home, half the time is like low on one color
Right.
versus another. So if I print it at home, chances are if I'm out of yellow, I'm gonna say print anyway. The colors are really gonna look different.
So now we're going to completely switch gears. So if you had a new company, you established the branding, and now you want to start creating things. One of the different avenues you can go down is social media. So I always push social media as a part of anyone's marketing, because I think it's super effective. There's a lot of data out there on people, and it's pretty cheap compared to other traditional forms of marketing. So why social media? 79% of the people online use Facebook. As of June 2018, Facebook had 1.47 billion daily active users. Twitter had 369 million monthly active users, and LinkedIn has 562 million members. So there are billions of people in the world. The vast majority of them are on some form of online, but on social media as well. So there's a massive amount of people that you can potentially reach when you're on these platforms. So you're obviously never going to want to reach 79% of those people on Facebook. They're not all going to be part of that ideal audience that you set for yourself in the beginning. But you can at least cast a wide net and narrow it down from there.
I have a question. As far as Twitter goes, considering it seems like it's kind of not used as frequently, are there stats on how frequently it's used now versus then? Maybe like 5 or so years ago?
So Twitter's relatively new compared to Facebook. And across the board, this is how many members they use,
Mhm.
but it is skewed, and you always want to look at your industry, so financial services,
Mhm.
even though there are less people on Twitter than in Facebook in general,
Mhm.
there are more people in financial services on Twitter than on Facebook.
Okay.
So these are just general stats. You ultimately want to look at your
The industry.
yeah, like
Okay.
look at the people that are like you. So some of the benefits of being on here, besides just being a lot of people, 3 billion people are on social media around the globe. So if you think about those stats that I just said about those active users, those are more important than just people being online. I'm sure you guys know people that have a Facebook page, but they never update it.
Exactly.
Those are not going to be the people that you want to reach. If you're going to put money behind an ad and all this effort into creating a presence, you really want to make sure you're reaching those people that are consistently logging in, they have a higher chance of seeing your content. Those active users mean way more than the people that are just there in general. So if you think about it, 3 billion people are on social media around the globe. It's a staggering number of people. 96% of people talking about companies and brands on social media aren't actively following those brands. So this sounds kind of negative, but as a marketer, this is a huge opportunity for you because it's very easy to go out and find out people that are talking about you. And then you can think, well, those people are talking about me, they're somewhat interested, but they're not following my brand. So if I just do a little bit of campaigning to get them to link up with you and identify themselves with your brand, that's 96% of those people can become potential clients for you.
With that stat there, what would be a success? Moving from 4% to 6%, or I mean, how?
So
What
the
would be
96% is the one you want. It's okay that
Correct.
people are talking about you but not following you,
Correct.
because that's 96% of the people that are talking about you don't actually have a relationship. So there's huge room and there's a huge potential for you to reach out to those people and make
Right.
them part of that 4%.
Well, right, but again, I'm trying to gauge what a reasonable expectation would be.
For increasing?
If you could increase from 4 to 25%, that would be massive.
It is
But
good.
is that even realistic?
I guess it would depend on how big your pool is. For RJO, it's much smaller than someone like JP Morgan. It's easier for them to turn the dial than it is for us.
Okay.
But that being said, as a marketer, you're always going to want to keep trying to attract those people that aren't following you. Because the more you do that, the bigger your brand is and the more well-known you are.
Sure.
So then 65% of salespeople who use social selling to fill their pipeline, compared to the 47% of reps who do not. So social selling is exactly what it sounds like. It's people that are using social media platforms to find their leads. So the people that do this and seek their potential clients on these platforms versus something like cold calling or emails, they're a lot more successful at filling their pipeline than the people who don't utilize this. So if you add this to some of your other more traditional types of selling, you're again upping your chances of filling that pipeline, which is any salesperson's end goal. So where do you begin? You know it's important, you know that there's a lot of people out there. How do you begin establishing your social media presence? It really comes down to 3 C's, which are the content that you put out, and that's the message you're creating. Conversation, which is what your audience is saying to you. And commentary, which is what your audience is saying about you. So this would be someone tweeting at you or posting on your Facebook page. This would be more like a review. They're not necessarily waiting for you to respond. Whereas this one is kind of initiating that direct conversation. So social media, when you boil it down, is all about conversation. You're really going to want to focus on this, but you can't have it without that good content. So you have to have all 3 done and done well to have a good presence online. So what type of content do you post? Again, it goes back to knowing your audience. When you know your audience and you know the type of content that they want, you can then begin to create that for them. You kind of put yourself in the shoes of the person you want to bring in as your lead, and then you think like them. You think, if I was seeing this, I would probably react this way. I might have this question in my mind, so I'm going to make sure that I answer that with my content. You're always thinking about the other person, not necessarily what you think they would want to see. Ask them, put out content, test it. If it doesn't work well, adapt. And you have to be relevant and timely with your posts as well. You want to be consistently posting on all of these platforms. I always say it's better to, ultimately you're going to want to always post consistently, but it's better to have no social media presence than to have one and never update it. Because to me, if I look up a company on Facebook and they never update their page, it just looks kind of bad. kind of hurts your brand image a little bit. So if you're gonna do it, go all the way, don't just half-ass it.
Sorry. I got lots of questions today. I apologize. As far, when you talk about consistent and regular frequent posting, what is your opinion regarding cyclic versus staggered posting? So for example, if the Todd blast goes out every second Friday, people become conditioned to seeing it. In some cases that's good, in some cases that's bad. If I did it every 13 days, that would break up the rhythm of it. Does that make it more or less attractive?
You almost, yes, they would expect you to see it, but it also becomes monotonous and
Right,
they start to like become numb to it. So you kind of want to change it up every now and then. It might work for you for a while, but then switch up the day.
Sure.
Because then they, it's kind of like an element of surprise. They're not expecting to see it, so it catches them off guard, and they might have a higher opportunity to stop and actually read it. So you need to be strategic about breaking through that noise. So, and I guess before I move on, about being relevant and timely, think about when you would be most likely to look on your platforms. That could be on your train ride into work or home. It could be on your lunch break, at night, or when you're watching TV. So you don't always necessarily need to post during your workday, because the chances of other people actually being on those platforms and looking are pretty slim. So there's a lot of capabilities to schedule things now. So you don't actually have to be on your computer pushing it out. You could schedule it for like 7 p.m. when you know a lot of people are going to be online. So you need to be strategic about breaking through the noise. So you want to be relevant and you want to talk about things that are trending. So if there's a market that's making a lot of moves, you're going to want to talk about that market. But it's kind of hard to make your post more relevant than everyone else talking about that market. So you want to say something a little different and kind of put your thoughts into the mix and make it different so that everyone else might be saying one thing, but they're going to stop on your post because you said something a little bit differently and they want to learn what you have to say. And sometimes it comes down to not what you're saying, but how you're saying it. Your medium really matters. So you could have the best developed content in the world, but it could just be a boring generic sentence. You didn't add a picture, you didn't add a video. And so people are seeing all of these posts all day. They're kind of like blindly going through their Twitter feed. If you're just plain tweeting, the chance of them stopping while they're scanning is pretty slim. You want to have something eye-catching in it that's going to make them stop and read it. So that being said, written articles, videos, and images are the 3 most engaging types of content on social media. So you always want to mix it up, but don't be afraid to put in the extra effort of attaching something else besides just your thought, because it pops on people's newsfeed, and they're more likely to engage with it.
What does the word clutch mean?
It's who the stat is from.
Oh, yeah.
It's also a pretty clutch stat.
Right, me too. I had a question in regards to that. For some time I've heard other people speak about not posting about the same thing all the time. Mm-hmm. To kind of tap into what you were saying about the mission statement and being clear on your values and things like that, and maybe following things or posting things in regards to maybe your values rather than what the actual business is being tailored to. Do you find any truth in that?
Yeah, absolutely. The more you mix it up, the better it is. Like I was saying to Todd earlier, if you're constantly posting at the same time of day or always posting the same type of content, it just becomes monotonous to people and they start to tune you out. But if you're mixing it up and they know that they might get something different if they check in with you regularly, they're going to keep coming back to your page.
And so a follow-up question to that would be, I had it in my head, would be, I'll come back to it because I lost it.
And those concepts kind of go across the board. It goes beyond just social media. That's any type of content. If you're sending out email campaigns, if you have a blog and you're putting out articles, you always want to mix up that content.
That's what I was going to say. So when it comes to the contents, let's say it's something that you yourself on your personal page have been seeing people posting about, something that's trending. Do you typically go for that kind of information or something new?
You want to go about that information because, like, when it comes to RGO specifically, if there's a market that's trending, I want to talk about that market. But you want to say, this is what everyone else was saying, but maybe you haven't thought about this aspect.
Okay.
So you're kind of putting yourself in the mix of what
Okay.
people are looking for,
Right.
but you're saying something different so that they'll actually go to your post and read it.
Yeah.
So content and RGO. There are two types of ones. You kind of move on to the next thing. And then there are longer drawn out campaigns which have multiple posts all about one similar topic. So this is an example of a one-off post. So Market Insights pumps out all these articles all day, every day. If it's compliance approved, we put it on Twitter to give people kind of like a sneak peek into, if you're a client of RGO, we have this amazing Market Insights team, and these are some of the things we're saying about the markets. It's also a really easy way for us to make, have commentary online about some of these markets that are trending. So again, we put that online. It's a one-off post because once it's out there, it's going to be outdated probably within the next couple of hours. So we don't really come back and address it again. Another one would be the press mention. So we have a lot of brokers that get quoted in these major news organizations. So again, this is a huge selling piece for us that someone that works here had enough good things to say about the markets. They were quoting in these big organizations. So this particular one is NASDAQ, but we have brokers in CNBC, all of these, like Reuters, Wall Street. When you have that big of a news organization and someone that works here is quoted in that, you want to highlight that. And it also showcases that if you were a client here, you're going to have a broker that people obviously trust. And then the third one is events. So again, this is kind of like a teaser for people that aren't our client. If you're a client of RGO, we give you the little extras, which are these events. So this one in particular is the IB Outlook meeting, regional meeting. So not only do we thank the people that helped participate, but we also like to show that, again, you get those little extras when you're a client at RGO.
With that energy 3 chart you posted earlier, you casually referred to compliance approved. What do you think your turnaround time is for compliance approval on a particular piece?
It's pretty fast, and it has to be.
Hours, days?
No, like minutes.
Oh, beautiful.
Like we get an email notification when it's published, like Randy or Dave put it online. We get the email notification, Alex will pull it, and he'll type up his post, send it to compliance, say, is this okay? They say yes or no within.
So it's posted before it's approved?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. What?
You type it up like
email them.
in an email,
Okay.
sorry. Exactly word for what you're going to say. You attach the images, the links, everything. Send it to compliance within a couple minutes. They'll
Oh,
come back,
beautiful. Oh, awesome.
and you'll know.
That's
Yeah.
different from 15 years ago, too.
Yeah. So now we're going to switch gears to some of the longer term campaigns. So again, you want to mix up your content. We have some of the one-off posts. We also want to do some longer term campaigns. And these again are multiple posts that communicate the same message. So for this one in particular, it was the intern spotlight. So each intern throughout the summer got their own post. You'll see consistent branding across the board. And that's kind of a way to identify that it is part of the same campaign. You can have things like hashtags too, which we're not necessarily thinking that this is going to start trending, but if you were to click on that hashtag, as we start posting, you can see all the posts together. So it's always important to group these things together. And then another example would be Transformation Tuesday. So we wanted to showcase that even though we've been around for a long time, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're this outdated firm. So we highlighted where we were and where we are now. So this particular post was on all of our locations. So we started in Chicago and now we're all over the world. There was another one on how many employees we had and how many markets that we traded in. And then the thing about this particular campaign is this hashtag trends every Tuesday, and it has nothing to do with finance. But because we made it relevant to us, we put ourselves in the mix of people that might not necessarily have been seeking out financial related information, but it still increases your chances of being found on the internet. So then you create your really good content, you put it out there, and now you need to start generating that conversation. So when you create that conversation, this allows people to connect with you and other people who follow your brand, which is really important because the bigger you get, the more you seem like this company that no one can really, you become less human. So when you have all of these social media platforms, this has been some of the greatest ways for people to get in touch with a company that they would never necessarily be able to talk to. So if I tweet a Target right now, they would actually respond to me probably pretty quickly. So you never used to be able to do that. So if you had a question or a complaint, you just kind of like went on with your day. Now you can reach out directly to these people at these big companies and they respond to you. And that's always going to be your ultimate end goal on social media, is to allow people a platform to speak with you on. But you need to ultimately find the platform where your ideal leads are and then figure out how to speak to them. So at RJO, we found that Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn are where a lot of people that we want as our client tend to be. Twitter and LinkedIn more specifically than Facebook. So we found the platforms that we wanted. Even though there are a ton of platforms out there, you don't necessarily need to have one on every single one of those. You want to attract the right people. And then you need to figure out how to speak to them. So that goes back to put out what you think they might want to see. If it doesn't perform well, change it up a little bit, and maybe the next time you post it, it'll do a lot better. And then there's also a concept of social listening. It's basically what people are talking about when they're not talking about you. So we could look at one of our competitors and look up FC Stone. What are the good things and the bad things you see online that people are talking about when talking about FC Stone? And then how do we fill in that hole, or how do we become that? Or how do we accommodate for something that they're not doing?
Is that search, the stone example you just gave, is that something that lay people can do, or something specific to marketing? I mean, would you do a Google News search?
No, you can actually go on the platform itself, and it kind of works like Google. You search in on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. Whether it's a keyword, like it could just be like a specific market, it could be a company, and you look at that, and then all of the people that have posted about that thing will come up in this long list.
So just
So you're literally just reading through and you're listening to what they're saying, and then a lot of times it creates opportunity for you to reach out to them.
Perfect.
So, like I said before, how can you be what they're missing? So if someone has a problem with FC Stone, maybe you take the opportunity to reach out and say, so I had a bad experience at FC Stone. At RJO, we do X, Y, and Z. That is a huge opportunity for you to sell to someone who was not even thinking about RJO, had no intention of reaching out, but you kind of became, you took out the work for them and you reached out to them first. And like I said, sometimes you have to reach out to them instead of waiting for them to come to you. You can't just create this content, put it out there, and expect all of these leads to flow in the door. Sometimes you have to be proactive and go out to those people and say, maybe they had a question about finance, or they were like, these markets are crazy. You can reach out and say, yeah, they are crazy, and I can help you manage your risk with that. So once you start posting your content to your own page, you kind of get to this point where things might start to plateau, the people that are engaging with that post, and so you get to a point where you might be considering paid advertising. So any paid ad on any of these social platforms all starts with good creative. And then once you create your post and you say what you want to say, you create the picture or the video that goes with it, you post it to your own page, you can then put some money behind it, and it gives you this opportunity to target people who don't currently follow your brand or your page. And when you're going through a paid advertising that you set up on, all the platforms do it, it allows you to target based on all of the interest that these people put into their social media profile. So think about all the info that you might have put on your Facebook page. I know the artist the musical artist that you like. I know the place you went on a vacation to. I know maybe you went to a restaurant and checked in. I know that. There's a lot of information on people on these platforms, which is why advertising on social versus putting up a billboard, you have the ability to target that right audience a lot easier. And then sometimes you can go out of the box too with your audience targeting and think, finance is one of the most obvious choices if we were to make a Twitter ad, but you can think outside of the box too and think, to trade you have to have a lot of money, so what do people do when they have a lot of money? And you kind of have to stereotype a little bit, but I might put in people who are interested in golf into my ad, or people who like to boat, people who like to travel, things that if you had more money you probably were doing these things, and so those become they're not necessarily directly related to finance, but they might get you your ideal client. So then how do you know how much is enough? The great thing about social media is you don't have to put a lot of money behind it at all. So if you were to take out a magazine ad, it might cost you a couple $1,000s. If you were to take out a TV ad, it's going to be a couple $100,000. A social ad would cost you a couple dollars. They're so cheap. So we had an ad that we were doing the Transformation Tuesday campaign. The first one did okay. Alex and I sat down and kind of brainstormed how to tweak our audience targeting a little bit. We put in some of those things that weren't quite as obvious with who would be an ideal person to interact with this post. So we put, was it $19 behind it? And the return was over 100% higher than the post before. So just a minor bit of tweaking and a little bit of money, and it had a huge return for us. So then how do you know if it's the right move? Once you start establishing your page, you create it, you start putting out some of the, what they call organic posts, which is just directly to your own profile. When you start to see those things plateau, maybe people aren't liking it anymore, your follower count isn't going up anymore, put a little bit of money, 20, 50 bucks behind it for the whole month, and that'll get you exposure to people who don't know who you are. And then you saw the stats earlier about how many billions of people are online using social media. You can be pushing out to a lot of other people. So you got your branding, you're going on down all of these avenues for marketing, and now the customer reviews start to flow in. This is kind of an uncomfortable spot for a lot of marketers because you don't really know what kind of floodgates you're going to open, and you don't know whether people are going to say good or bad things. But they're important because reputation makes up over 25% of a brand's market value. So reputation goes back to the company values that you said about yourself, your mission statement, are you actually following that? And then just what people think about you, how good your service is. Reputation is a quarter of how important you are out in the marketplace. So if you have a bad reputation, that's going to really hurt your business. And it's a lot easier to build up a good one than it is to repair a bad one. So you always want to be proactive about being positive on this. So you're obviously going to want to start fostering some of these good reviews. And that they're good because reviews allow for an open forum for discussion. The second people think that they have this opportunity to communicate with you, they have a way to alleviate some of the things that were either frustrating or they can get stuff off their chest. The second you close down that form of communication, people don't think they can communicate with you, and it kind of creates a little bit of tension with your brand. So you actually want reviews. And they're not just for your customers either. They can be from people who have interviewed with us, they can be from current employees or past employees. So if you think, if I want to foster good reviews, I might want to reach out to the people who currently work at my company, because chances are, if they're still here, they probably have some good things to say about it. So you can ask them to leave a review for your company, because the more reviews you have that are good, when you do get that bad review, it's going to be offset by a lot more good ones. And these will either work with you or against you. So again, you have to be really proactive about being really good with customer service, making sure you're being consistent with putting out your best work so that you're fostering these good reviews from happening. And let these market for you. This is PR in its basic form. You're letting someone else do the work. They're saying something good about you. All you do is let it sit out there. People are going to stumble across that, and it's going to have way more weight than you putting all this money and effort behind any kind of marketing campaign. Of course, I'm going to have nothing but good things to say in anything that I put out because I work for RJO. But if one of our clients has a good review out there about our customer, potential customers are going to align with that way more than my marketing campaigns. 54% of consumers visit a local business's website after reading a positive review. Because again, that holds a lot of weight. Someone's really honest and unprovoked opinion about your company. So they're gonna really value that. So if it's good, the chances of them following through and doing business with you is a lot higher. And then after that, given two products with similar ratings, consumers are more likely to buy the product with more reviews. So if our firm is on equal playing field with another firm as far as services, but our reviews are worse, they're gonna go with that other firm. So again, this has to be part of your marketing strategy. You have to make sure you're constantly trying to get these good reviews in the door. So the chance of you getting a bad review is pretty high, especially in finance, because you're dealing with people losing money. So they're probably not going to have a lot of positive things to say about that. So when you do get a bad one, you obviously want to prevent them in the first place by having a strong focus on customer service. Just because you had a bad experience with a client, if they post a bad review and you respond and you try to provide a solution for them, you're really going to diffuse the situation a lot, and you can prevent them from just leaving altogether. They might still have the opportunity to come back in the door. If you are going to respond, the response times are super important. If I leave a bad review and a year later someone responds, I'm going to be completely done with that company. Also, if I am looking at a company and I see all these bad reviews and nobody ever reached out, it kind of is a little off-putting because it means that somebody said something good or bad about you and you really didn't care. So you always want to make sure that you're interacting with people who take the time to give you feedback. For the general reviews, which means maybe I was trying to open an account, it took a little longer than normal, so I wrote a bad review. That to me would be a general bad review. You always want to respond to those with a solution too. Don't just say thank you for your feedback and call it a day. Say, sorry about your experience, is there anything that we can do next time to make it easier for you? Because again, you're being proactive, you're offering them a solution, and so you're diffusing that situation. But you will get these extreme ones when you read it, it'll be obvious. Someone clearly just wanted to get something off their chest. 9 times out of 10, it is better for you to just leave that and not respond, because all they wanted to do was vent. They weren't necessarily caring about what you had to say. So if you did respond, you're probably just going to prolong this anger that client had. So you kind of have to use your judgment, and like I said, the more you read reviews, the more you'll know a general bad review versus those extreme ones. But sometimes you have to just let sleeping dogs lie.
I have a question about reviews. Here at RJO, we have designated people to respond to those, don't we?
Well, it used to be Michael, so now they brought that up.
So now it's you, Tina.
But a lot of times, because the marketing people own that platform, it's under their admin, they're the ones that get the notification.
Okay.
Things like Glassdoor, you don't have to just be the admin of the page. You'll get notifications, but you always want to make sure you set those up so that when one does come in the door, you're reviewing it right away and you're coming up with a solution or deciding whether someone just had to get something off their chest and you can just let them do that.
Yeah. Recently, I realized that people are able to give their feedback on Indeed.com. They have like
That's
a
a good one then.
Glassdoor sort of.
Yeah.
So
then that's probably going to be one of those where you're trying to foster reviews with interviewees too, because those are the people that are using Indeed.
Yep.
So if someone interviewed, they might not necessarily have gotten the job, but if they had a really positive experience with you, I wouldn't be afraid to ask them.
Right.
It's a very small review about your company because they obviously don't work for us. They don't know a lot beyond just interviewing, but good interview experiences are just as positive.
It's just things like that. Like we didn't even know there was that people were doing those reviews on Indeed. So how would you respond? You know, I mean.
That's kind of the hard thing with social media in general. Is all these platforms emerge every day.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to know which ones that need to be on your radar.
Okay.
I think probably just checking in every month or so and seeing what's out there. Obviously those platforms are going to be off the radar of marketing, but as HR, those are going to be important for you to monitor.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Plus you can kind of tell if people are applying to the jobs from a certain platform, those are probably going to be the ones to watch.
Right.
I had a question. So when people do post on Glassdoor and if you respond, is that just for that person to see or is it like on the website?
It depends. So on Glassdoor, I haven't ever responded to review, but I have responded to stuff on things like Twitter and Facebook. You always want to put it public initially because it shows that you did take the effort to respond for other people. But you always want to prompt them to take it offline because then they feel more comfortable giving you their response, and if it should escalate, you're not putting that out there for everyone to see. So once you have all of this established, what is the purpose of it all? It all comes down to lead generation. If we aren't, at the end of the day, as marketers bringing leads into the door, there is no point for us being here. So that's always got to be what you have in mind when you're creating anything, is this actually going to generate business for us? The less companies know about their KPIs, which are your goals, how you know how well you're doing, the less likely they are to meet their revenue goals. So the less you communicate what your goals are, the less likely you are to reach them. You want to make sure that when you establish those from the get-go, that everyone's on the same page, everyone knows where you're at, how you're progressing, because the more everyone's on board, not only is your marketing going to be more streamlined across the board, but you're all going to be achieving the same goal. And then 74% of companies that weren't exceeding revenue goals did not know their visitor, lead, MQL, which is a marketing qualified lead, or sales opportunities. So again, the departments that are outside of marketing still need to know your initiatives because marketing kind of blurs the line with a lot of different departments. You can't have these siloed companies because I'm trying to bring in leads in the door, but I'm ultimately not the one that's working it in the end. That goes to the sales team. And then finance is the one that's monitoring all this progress too. So even though I'm just marketing, my goals need to be well known across the firm, because when everyone's working towards the same goal, you're way more likely to reach that goal.
I think someone's trying to ask a question.
Did someone have a question that was dialed in? Yes, ma'am. So what's the bottom line? This isn't about you, it's about your audience. Like I said before, what you think that they might want to do, put it out there. If they're not responding, they're telling you that it's not what they're interested in, and you have to kind of let go of that concept and adapt. Combining different types of marketing provides a way to tap into many different audiences. So everyone needs branding. I outlined social media. That is not necessarily the one and only way one and only path you should be going down. I personally feel like it should be one of them, because I do think it is really effective. But you can't just put all your eggs into one basket. Do social media, do some email marketing, have a website, put out some printed collateral, because again, it's casting a wide net. And although there are best practices for each type of marketing, a lot of the underlying themes do remain the same across the board. And those are to know your audience, which is what I've been saying throughout this whole presentation. Constantly keep creating and evolving. Just because you knock a campaign out of the park, pick up, move on to the next one, and do it again. Because marketing is never over. And it all depends, which is probably the most infuriating part about marketing, but there are so many components that come together to make a good campaign that if one of them is a little bit off, the whole thing is ruined. Also, just because you do knock it out of the park one time, you could do that same exact thing again and it might not necessarily work. So it's kind of frustrating, but it's you have to play with it and you have to keep adapting and just know that you constantly have to be putting in this effort all the time. And that is all. Any more questions?
Do you have anything on like the success rate of a broader versus more targeted? Like, I feel like the ideal client that we're looking for obviously would have more risk capital, and somebody that is maybe 50 and older, there's going to be less of them on Twitter, but they have a better chance of having more risk capital. Whereas, so versus like social media versus something like a Wall Street Journal subscribers.
Yeah, so I don't have stats, but I just, from my personal experience, I know that the more you target, the better results you're going to get. So if you get quality over quantity, you might have 50 leads in the door versus 100, but out of those 50, maybe more of those opened up an account because they were actually more aligned with what you do and they knew who you were. So just because you're lessening that pool of people that you're targeting doesn't necessarily mean you're going to open less business. So I would say that smaller targeting tends to work better. Or at least, not necessarily smaller, but more
defined.
Yeah, more defined.
Your kill ratio goes up.
Exactly. Any other questions? All right.